It is 6:35. I call us to order.
Natalie.
And hello, Shama. I didn't get a chance to say hello to you when you came in.
Oh, that's okay.
Hi, Shama.
Hi all. Natalie, Sully.
Okay, we have nobody's here for citizen comments that I see. And we've got everybody's here today. Everyone's and again, I feel like it's been a long time since we all saw and heard each other. So hello, everybody. It's nice to see you all again.
Just missing Aiden.
Oh, thank you.
For Shama's notes, we're just missing Aiden.
Thank you very much. I actually saw her when I drove by her the other day and screamed and waved at her and then sent her a hug through the car. Okay, would somebody like to approve the minutes from our last meeting?
We need to do the roll call.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I skipped that in my notes.
Okay.
Shama, no, roll call us, please.
Natalie Sully.
Here.
JC Herman.
Here.
Elaine Siegel.
Here.
Debbie Braun.
Here.
And Martha Gaines.
Here.
Okay. Also in attendance, Dr. Patricia Effiam and myself. Shama took over. Yes?
Yes. Yes. And then not present is
Aiden.
Oh, okay. And not present is Aiden
Nolan.
Nolan. Thank you. Is it Nolan Bernstein?
Bernstein Nolan, isn't it?
I just call her Aiden Nolan.
Okay.
Yeah, I've only heard her by Nolan.
I think on Facebook she has both, but on our website she just goes by Aiden Nolan.
Okay. All right. Citizen comments.
None.
Would somebody like to move?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the last meeting.
April 15th.
Yeah, that one, April 15th, please.
I'll second. Natalie Sully.
No, Debbie Braun.
And all in favor, JC Herman?
Yes.
Elaine Siegel?
Yes.
Martha Gaines? For approval? Yes. Okay. And not present then, would I note?
No, just do me and Debbie. And
Okay.
then that'll be enough.
All right. It has been approved. Bye.
Shama, call my name and call Debbie's name.
Oh, I'm sorry. Natalie Sully.
Yes.
And Debbie Braun. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, all approved.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. That brings us to old business, social media posts. Natalie.
Yeah, so we did not meet for our last meeting of the month in April. So we're going to talk about it today. Just if anybody has any ideas for social media posts between now and our next meeting, based on the calendar, let's see, today is May 20th. I know we have a new business item to talk about, the monthly meeting schedule, but we could potentially not be meeting until the 17th. So if we wanted to do some kind of like Juneteenth post, for example, today would be the time to kind of talk about that and plan it, or anything else you guys had in mind. Thoughts?
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that up, because as I turned my planner and had to recognize that summer really is happening and we're moving forward in time, I wanted to make sure that we, because we had talked about planning for this.
Looks like Dr. Effiam has her hand up.
Yeah, can you hear me? Am I on mute? Another thing I thought we should really pay attention to is Elaine has brought up several times this idea of the threatening graffiti that continues to grow out of control and be a threat to our community. I'm not sure, I wasn't at the last board meeting, if Elaine made a report and how the board responded, but perhaps a short video, perhaps our beat cop, perhaps us, saying this is not okay and here's how to report it. It just seems to be something that we ought to pay some attention to.
So you're suggesting making a social media post about it?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's, I think it should be made a social media post. We're around on the sidewalks all the time, and we're seeing these threatening graffiti throughout the community. But they're particularly intense right here around the park. Just this past week, without going over the perimeter, I found 3 of them that were right on top of each other along Elmwood, right there by the playground, and they had disparaging graffiti. I sent to Pat a couple of flyers that I found that literally had hangman nooses with little bodies hanging from them. This is very very troubling graffiti. I have made a police report. I've spoken with a couple of different officers. They asked us to keep reporting. They point out the First Amendment issues, which of course are I'm well aware of. They're obvious, but the First Amendment does not protect threatening speech. And something else that I was particularly bothered by was that one of these graffiti appeared right across from the Fresh Anointing Church over there on the corner from the Park District House. Mm-hmm. And some of these are starting to say now God is tired of Christians, and so on and so forth. And it makes you wonder if this person seems to think that they're, a messenger to remedy God's fatigue that this person is attributing to him. So I did call the church. I did talk with somebody. I did speak with the police about perhaps having somebody around during services, just to be careful. But these are things that may be nothing. Maybe these are just the expressions of somebody that's kind of obsessive, or it may be something that's a genuine threat. And I don't think we're in a position to be able to make that determination.
It sounds like this person isn't picky, just hates everybody.
Well, there is a particular targeting of Christians. It's been going on for a long time, and it says it very explicitly and equates Christians with terrorists and racists. Not that there hasn't been, not that the Christian church or branches of the Christian church haven't been involved with systemic racism, but that's not what these are saying.
Just to kind of give you an update, Elaine has kept us posted on things that she's seen. Brian and I did meet with Martha and Matt, who are both on the board. We were meeting about skate area stuff, but happened to be on that corner where some of the graffiti items were had been written and posted. So we talked about that. Brian's been in contact with the police multiple times about this. It's kind of a strange situation. If we see it on the sidewalk, we can certainly clean it up. The sidewalk, however, is not Ridgeville Park District property. That's city management area. And, if we see something going on during the day, we can certainly call the police or intervene or whatever. But it seems like a lot of the stuff is happening after hours, in which case, and in any case, it's definitely a policing issue. It needs to be brought to the attention of the police. So I can certainly
talk to the beat cop.
I believe Brian has, yeah. He's been in touch with the police multiple times about this. So in terms of posting something about it on social media, Pat, I'm curious. I I mean, I would feel most comfortable if that post leaned towards, you know, how to, if you see something happening in the park after hours, if you see something that appears dangerous to you or threatening, like it needs to be a police call.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to compose that post, I guess. Also, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. So do you have any like kind of specific thoughts on the direction of how that post should go?
So not being a social media person, I'll tell you what I'm thinking is not to repost what's there, but to say that there has been some graffiti found in the area that is unwelcoming.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps even threatening. I don't know how far we want to go with the language. If you come upon that, please report it to the police department. All people deserve to be respected.
There's also some sensitivity right now about police. So
what are we going to do? So we're not going to, I don't see where that comes into this.
I'm just saying it out loud because it's real.
Oh.
And I can't ignore that. And I can't ignore that people are going to respond to the posts that I put on social media. And then I'm going to have to deal with it. So I'm just asking what we all think about that conversation and like, how do I respond to it? How do we as a REDI committee feel that we should respond to that should that come up? And I feel like it most likely will if I put it on a park page.
I have something to say. I think that's what I was gonna also suggest, to put something like that on there, that we've seen this. It's very unwelcoming. It is not, whatever. Please report it to the police or to the park district. And I think this business about the police, what's going to be said? I don't want to call the police. The police are doing it. I mean, so what do we do? Shy away from that? I don't really see where this is going to be a police problem. I mean, it's a problem for the police, but I don't see where saying that on social media is going to invite issues about the police. And if it does, we don't need to answer those, because that's not our place and it's not Ridgeville's position.
Can I jump in? Because I actually want to take a step backwards for a second from the idea of dealing with any, repercussions of the post, because I feel strongly that I don't see any reason that the REDI committee of the Ridgeville Park District would make a post about this at all or comment on this publicly at all. And maybe I'm missing something, but I don't even see why the REDI committee of the Ridgeville Park District is talking about this. I mean, if this is an issue that should involve the police, then it involves the police. And if this is an issue that offends people in the community, I totally get that, but I don't see the relevance of the REDI committee talking about this. And so if anybody wants to come back to that and explain to me why they see the relevance, I would love that, because I am completely confused why we're even talking about it. I don't mean to say that it's not an issue. I don't see why it's on our table at all. And I will chime into what Natalie said, which is, that we took a look at it with two board members there, with Brian there, with Natalie there. It's my sense that this graffiti is being done by somebody who might have mental illness or might be part of a very fringe group of people who have extreme beliefs. And I don't understand, we don't even know who's doing it, and the police may or may not be correct in their previous assumption of who it was that was doing it. Maybe it's still that person, maybe it's a different person. I just, I'm a broken record now, but I don't understand, what is here for us to deal with this issue.
I have a thought on that. It's hate speech. It's like racism. It's, it's hate. Would it be better if they out and out said, Black people, blah, blah, blah? I mean, that's the implication. And it is around the Ridgeville Park District area. I think that I mean, I was actually going to refer it to the REDI committee from the board meeting when we were hearing it. I mean, isn't that what we're about?
Yeah.
And I think we should come up with a suggestion to give back to the board. I mean, we still have to deal with this. It's hate speech. And yes,
Well,
it's obviously somebody who's very sick. But wait a minute. It's obviously someone who's very sick, but that kind of people, those people can be very dangerous also. And I don't think we should just ignore it. And I think it is a REDI committee thing.
Okay, so the REDI committee is racial equity, diversity, and inclusion. And if it's been established that this graffiti is targeting Christians, we're a government agency. I'm not quite sure it's our place to even within the realm of racial equity, diversity, and inclusion. I'm not sure it's our place to come out publicly against some chalk graffiti in the neighborhood that is, offensive to Christians. I don't.
What about the people on? I haven't seen it, but what about the people hanging from nooses? That
Well, you have
Christian hate. That doesn't imply Christian to me. It implies black, white.
Well, you do have that. You do have the lynching, which implies black, but you also have it targeted around Fresh Anointing, which is a black congregation. And this is a good place for you all as a committee to determine where are the places we're going to be silent, we should be silent, and where are the places that we should be more outspoken. And that's really an internal question that you all have to ask of yourselves. And there's no right or wrong. It is what you all determine to be necessary.
And can we just go backward on a logistics point? I mean, I this is like kind of, maybe I missed something. The idea of the REDI committee making a post on social media, the REDI committee has no presence right now on social media. There's no page for the REDI committee. There's no Instagram account for the REDI committee. So is this the Ridgeville Park District that we're talking about would make a post? Or
yes,
yeah, it's been seen on Ridgeville property. It's a hate
on Ridgeville property or city property?
Well, around Ridgeville area, right? It's been on the sidewalk, which is not Ridgeville property. It's city property. But
it's there all the time. I'm sorry.
It's there all the time, and it's certainly close enough to the parks that our programs, the kids are going to see it.
They can't miss it.
And if we don't have a social media presence, then make one. Or put it through the Ridgeville. I don't think it's something we can ignore.
Elaine, do you have pictures that you could somehow share with us as a committee? Because I saw what I saw when I happened to be meeting with Natalie and Brian about the skate equipment. That's the only time I have ever seen an image personally of this graffiti. And there was no imagery in what I saw. It was just words. And it was sort of incoherent. I mean, all I could take away from it is that they were anti-colonizer white people, and that, there was some sort of commentary on how Christians, need to sort of behave in certain ways, or else they could be construed as racist. And maybe there was some sort of connection that was being attempted between religious Christians and racist behavior. It really didn't, it wasn't clear what was even being said, in my opinion. So I feel like I could, sorry, Natalie.
I was to clarify what you're saying. It seemed to be about the contradicting behavior of Christians that follow Jesus's example. And then also it seemed to be very political leaning from what we saw when we were together. Isn't that what we discussed?
Right. I mean, right. And I did take pictures, and I haven't looked at them super recently, so I can't remember exactly what words were used, but it was sort of like you just said, Natalie, this idea that there's one way that you act like you're behaving and you're following a certain thing within a religion, but then what you actually do is different than that. And maybe the idea of love your neighbor. Oh, oops, your neighbor's black. Maybe you don't love your neighbor as much as you would if your neighbor was white or something. But again, I'm just ad-libbing on what I think the person was trying to say, because they weren't even being clear in their writing. And then the ones that were posted to the traffic lights or the what do you call them? The street light poles. I couldn't make heads or tails of it. And so, I mean, before we as a committee or we as a park district take an official stance against some unknown graffiti artist in the area that isn't even on our property, but is on city property. And we've already established that this is a police issue. I just, again, I don't think this is in our court. I don't see it.
Well, Martha,
Elaine, I'm sorry. Can you hold on to that real fast? Shama, you raised your hand a little bit ago.
I did. I just wanted to add that I take our dog on a walk every night, and I have seen it in 6 different places on like a 2.5, almost 3 block walk towards Ridgeville. And it's close. It is city property. And it's there, and it seems to be more. So I just wanted to say
Thank
that.
you.
Yeah, it's
Elaine,
there.
thank you. Elaine, what were you going to say?
yeah, I've been watching this for a while, and my husband and son and I all take this quite seriously. Our son was woken up a couple of weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago now. He was woken up in the middle of the night by the person taping these things to the poles. And shortly after that, maybe the next day, and I didn't, shame on me, but I didn't take notes as to the time and the exact location, but we found some flyers that were lying, or I found some flyers that were lying on the street. And I have seen an evolution in these, in the messages that I find really troubling. And I have seen them in the past where you could give them Martha's innocent construction. That what's really being talked about here is, why aren't you following the teachings of Jesus kind of statement. I haven't seen that, but I have seen discussion about the role of Christianity in colonization, genocide. I've seen some things that I would say can fairly be characterized as political speech, but I have also seen a lot of things that are, it's hate speech.
I can't walk away from this. Never mind.
I'm sorry. I've seen some things that you'd have to characterize as hate speech, and these little flyers. I'm saying little flyers that they're the size of a sheet of 8 by 10 paper. They have like manifestos on them. They're plastered with Ku Klux Klan figures, and they're saying God is tired of Christians. That's not the precise wording, but it's something like that. God is so tired. And then there'll be little Ku Klux Klan figures. I say little because they're small, not because they're insignificant. And sometimes there's a cross. There's a cross right underneath all of that. So I think that to give it an innocent construction and try to dismiss it on that basis is problematic. Now, the police can and will. They said they would wash the things away, the graffiti away if people would call and ask them to. I'm really troubled that they keep ringing the park.
Yeah, this is very troubling to me too. Things like this don't stop here.
Yeah.
And I think Elaine has been, thank you for sending, at least to me, but some of the language is really strong. Faggots are scouts. Priest equal KKK. Racists are Christians. Racists are terrorists. Traditional MAGA. Gangbangers of Boy Scouts of America. God's tired tolerating. You should be too. God's tired of tolerating. You should be too. God's so tired of these. Always right. Always demanding only your Christian rights. So, like I said, how you all, and be clear that whenever you respond as a REDI committee, you're responding as the park district. So it's always on behalf of the park district. So it just needs to be determined as a group, as a board, really. Is there more to be done, or are you satisfied having talked to the police and making sure they'll walk that beat a little closer and wash it down? Only you all can determine if that's the response that you want to give.
I would feel it would really upset me if we do nothing. I just feel like, what are we here for? You know, this is all part of the hate stuff and inclusion and all of that. This to me is racist issues. It's all of those issues. And I don't see anything wrong with just saying, you know, we've noticed this. If you notice it, please bring it to the police's attention because they're watching for it.
I think that, Debbie, I think in terms of posting on social media, if we agree to do that with this, I think that's the way to go, is like, hey, we've seen this. If you see this, here's the correct outlet for how to deal with it. Just be careful and be aware of what's going on. I also feel like if I'm going to post this on the Ridgeville Park District page, I need to clarify this is a message from the REDI committee, which is, I think, fine. We haven't really talked about how we're going to do posts for the REDI committee yet. But otherwise, I feel like we have to refer this back to the board for the board to approve. And I don't know that we want to do that. So
I don't think we need
is everybody
to do
comfortable
that.
with it coming from the REDI committee on
So
the?
what do we do now? I mean, it's not on the, well, it is on the agenda, isn't it? It is on the agenda.
It can,
We
it was.
Vote on it.
We can put it back on the agenda for June. That's what I'm saying. I don't know that you want to wait until June. So
Why would we wait when this is going on now? Wait till something happens?
well, that's what I'm saying. I don't think that you want to wait. So is it okay to post it from the REDI committee, or you want this to just be a Ridgeville Park District post?
I think it can go from the REDI committee, but it can go on the Ridgeville, I think, on the Ridgeville's already up and running social media platform. But yeah,
I can say it's from the REDI committee. It's a message from
I think we need to vote on it, right?
Can we rule, Elaine has something to say, and then I would like to add something too before we like move to that next step real fast.
I do. I've got a couple of things that I think are important. And one is that I've spoken to the police a couple of times this past week. Because the first officer that I spoke to who took a report asked me to do so. So when more of the graffiti turned up, I did call them. And they indicated that they would send somebody over to wash down the graffiti. Again, that's their role. I'd like to see them doing that. They did not. I happened to be walking past. The graffiti was still there. I think they're still there now. And so I think that that the police need to be more responsive. That's one thing that I think that we need to be aware of. But the other thing is that I'm really anxious. This is not the first time that those graffiti have appeared in front of that church. I did call the church. They got back to me on Sunday. They probably weren't in the office to get my message before that. I was in the middle of the Art Institute, and there was only so much that I could say when they called. And I do not know that I was successful in communicating to them, the possible danger. And the fact that the police are willing to station a cruiser out there, I mentioned that to them, that the police are willing to station a cruiser there when they're having services. So I think that I would recommend that we push the police a little bit more. There's quite a bit that they can do before they feel that they're trampling on First Amendment toes.
Who's our beat cop at Ridgeville, Natalie? Do you know? It's not Tasha, is it? Is it Tasha Wilson? I'm happy to call her. I'm happy to call her, and I can't imagine.
I think she knows. I mean, I think she knows. But yeah, call her.
Yeah.
Call her, see if she has any ideas.
But I also think we should put it on the, I think we should just let people know. Somebody walks by and sees it and thinks, that's pretty awful. What do I do? Maybe they don't think of calling the police. Maybe they don't,
I think, okay, so I just want to synthesize a little bit of this information that came in. I agree with Martha. I haven't seen any of these images. I don't necessarily feel like I need to see those images to make a decision tonight about whether or not we post. I'll get to that in a minute. But I would at least like to be aware of what these look like, since we're having so many conversations about it. I would like to have my eyes on what it is that we're speaking of. It's not something that I think is appropriate to pull up in this forum, but if, you know, if we, those of us who haven't seen it, if we can see those images so that I know what exactly what it is that we're talking about, I would also appreciate that. I echo Natalie's concern about the police, because I think this is kind of exactly the situation in which we're talking about in terms of police reform, right? I mean, if this is somebody who we can read those words, we can look at those pictures, we can do whatever we want to interpret what is on that sidewalk. We have no idea what this person's intention is, and it's not our job to try to figure it out. It's our job to make sure that our community is safe, and we have no way of being like, oh, it's fine or it's terrible. We need to assume that the language is reflecting violence, and so that there may be violence. And we need to address that. And I think the issue with the police comes in that, is this somebody who is just a violent human being and needs to be dealt with police officers? Or is this someone having a mental health issue and needs to be dealt with in that capacity? I think that's where this police issue comes in.
Well, at this point, what we have are the police.
Exactly, and that's what I was going to say next. Right, we don't have a way to get this person to a mental health. We don't have a way to assess this person. This is the avenue that we have, and in this moment in time, we need to take it, I think. And I also think that we just need to kind of hopefully trust. Go upstairs, over there. Hold on. We just need to hopefully trust that the police will make the right decision in this moment, and that the reform that is moving forward is going to address these issues, right? Daniel,
I know Tasha Wilson very good, and she's a policewoman, and she's been on the force for 17 years or more. I can't imagine, and she's a woman, that she would be anything but appropriate with this.
Well, right, but we don't get to choose that she's the one who's going to respond.
But that's what I'm saying. So what if somebody writes in, well, the police do. This is what we have to work with. This is what we use.
Can I say something about that really quickly? I think that you're right, Debbie, because that is the response. And that's the response from us as staff, is when people see, if they see, something that they think is going on or dangerous in the park after hours, the response is you need to call the police after hours, because we're not at the park. We can't do anything about that. Now, that being said, I'm sensitive to just putting a post up and saying, hey, call the police when you see something scary. So I'm wondering.
Well, I don't think you word it like that. You say,
I understand. I can be sensitive about it, but if the only option I give is, hey, call the police, maybe I can also say, call the police if you see something, or if you think that you're experiencing, or if you're witnessing like a mental health crisis, if here's some other resources, maybe that post can list some other numbers to call besides just the police.
You're not going to see the person doing it.
I
call a mental health thing and say, here's a flyer, do something.
Well, maybe a solution, maybe our solution is more local. Because Elaine has seen these quite a bit around this particular church, and because Elaine has reached out to the church, maybe this is just one of those places we build relationship with the church. And so that we reach out to the church, take them over some cookies, and say, we've noticed this graffiti. I hope you haven't noticed it, but we want you to know, as good neighbors, we stand with you. And if you ever are in support, reach out to us. So maybe a place where we build good relationship.
I like that. I like that a lot.
Start, I think.
I personally think this is something that should be discussed by the REDI committee, because I agree that this is an equity issue. And I had another thought. What was it? We were talking about.
Can I interject, JC, just to ask you a question about that point in particular?
Yes.
For somebody to say that something is an equity issue, and I, of course, mean this to you personally in no way, shape, or form. I'm talking more generally. But for people to say something, such and such is an equity issue, I mean, Dr. Effiam can correct me up and down, left and right on this if she feels the need, but that's not enough to me. You don't get to just say, again, not you, JC, the proverbial you don't get to just say something's an equity issue. We saw Dan Coyne say that barbecuing was an equity issue. We looked into it. Okay. We didn't find any evidence of something happening at Ridgeville about barbecuing that involved equity, like period, end of story. So at least not that we can discern. And so I just am trying to ask you, like, what do you mean, and what do any of you mean that this is an equity issue?
I can answer that question for you, Martha, and I really appreciate it because you're right. We shouldn't just be throwing around that term and not explaining it. I very much respect that. To me, it's an equity issue because if I were a Christian and I were walking down the sidewalk and I saw that in my neighborhood, I would
Or
no
a Jew, or a Jewish person. It's very offensive and scary to a Jewish person.
I would
Can
not.
you let her talk? Actually, I want to hear JC talk.
I would not feel safe. I would not feel welcome, and I would not feel comfortable. Those images are images that are being put up to make particular people feel like they do not belong in this community. And that to me is why it's an equity issue.
So that makes it an inclusion issue.
And thank you. Inclusion issue. Thank you for correcting me.
So here we're talking about inclusion issues. Somebody is being excluded or attempting to be excluded based on a couple of different things.
So maybe that's where it's not an equity issue, it's an inclusion issue. And that's, again, and I appreciate you bringing that up because I don't want to just be throwing these words around. I want to be using them with meaning. So to me, that's why we need to address this.
Can I say one? Oh.
Well, I just wanted to ask Dr. Effiam because Sarah was interrupting me, so I may have missed a piece. Dr. Effiam was responding to Elaine having reached out to the church, which it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, was not like a comprehensive conversation yet, but was a good start to connecting with them to make sure they know about it, see how they feel about it, that kind of stuff. And then I didn't hear what Dr. Effiam said in response to that, but I did hear that she started to address that. And perhaps even before I hear the answer, I was ready to say that, if we want to connect with church communities within Ridgeville that could be, offended by and having a problem with this and looking for partnership and networking on finding the best way to try to resolve this issue, I fully support that. I fully support connecting with entities in the community that this, could be the target of this kind of, alleged hate speech. Again, what I saw with my own eyes was not hate speech. So I would have to see what other people have seen to form an opinion about this. I mean, what I'm hearing people have seen with nooses and things like that, that's not what I saw. And I don't even know, that we know that that only one person is doing this. Have we assessed the handwriting? Does it seem like it's definitely only one person, or is it a group of people? So I just want to be clear that I fully support engaging with, entities and members of our community that could be offended by this and working together to raise awareness, let people know that if you see it, if you see something, say something kind of thing, call the police, etc. And, in terms of the idea that this could escalate and that there's an argument for this becoming a dangerous thing or a violent thing, that's absolutely something that we should, talk about, discern whether we think there's evidence of that and deal with it accordingly. Of course, not really us deal with it, but involve the police. And if the police response has been, not what it should have been, that is an issue. And we can absolutely talk to the police directly about what we want to see from them. But it seems like Elaine has seen this kind of graffiti going way back. I mean, I don't remember exactly when, but I know that there was a period of time where it was being seen. Then the police said, we know who's been doing this and she's not going to be around anymore, something like that. And then there was a period of time where we weren't seeing it. And now we're in another period of time where we're seeing it again. It's this total length of time that we've seen this kind of, public graffiti has been lengthy in terms of, more than months. Are we talking years? That to me points towards, no, this isn't escalating. This is somebody expressing their views in the form of graffiti and they keep doing it and they keep doing it. I don't necessarily think we need to jump and hit a panic button and say that any danger or violence is actually part of that. And that is the basis for the distinction between the free speech being protected and okay, as nasty as it may be sometimes, versus, hate speech and things that, point towards violence towards groups of people. And that latter part, again, with what I've seen, I'm not feeling like that's what we're talking about at all. So I know I said a lot right there. Thank you for listening. But Elaine, could you chime in about how long it's been going on? Like
Yeah,
the total
let me add, sure. I did see something about it a while back. I've got the, I've saved the documents. I did call the police at the time. And it was several years ago. It was before the pandemic. And the morning of 9/11, our house number is 9/11 for what that's worth. There were the first of those graffiti. It was, this is the same person. I know my iconography well enough to recognize that this is the same person. It's not a group. It could be a group, but I'm not seeing related graffiti from any other hand. I'm quite certain that that's the same person. I have seen, like I said before, I've seen an evolution that really worries me about the speech becoming more obsessive, more frequent, and more violent. When this came up several years ago, the police said, "Don't worry, this person isn't harmful. She's going away." Didn't say why she was going away, whether she was moving, whether she was going to be incarcerated, whether she was going to be hospitalized. We didn't get any information about that at all. Nor do we know why that person has come back. The police are now using a masculine pronoun. Now it's he. So, I question the quality of the information that we got. I still have the position that I'm coming from, Martha, is that I still have ringing in my ears a couple of trainings that I went to that were staged by the FBI, Chicago Police, and the ADL, talking about just how dangerous, they were talking about right-wing extremism specifically, but extremism could be, and how vulnerable places of worship are. And here we are, we've got these things popping up frequently around our playgrounds with our children and in front of a church. And I think that, to me, it seems that it is desirable to have not just a particular church in our immediate neighborhood, but to let the community know that there seems to be, a questionable. We don't know if this person is violent. We don't know what might erupt. But how many times do we hear about mass? What can I say about mass attacks, where people have ignored the warning signs? So I can't say that it's not, nor do I want to go with an assumption that it's not when we don't know.
It's also the kind of speech that makes people feel uncomfortable in the neighborhood they live in. It's also the kind of speech that says, if you don't agree with me, then you shouldn't be here, basically. And what are we about here? Are we only dealing with little things that happen on the park? I mean, this is our neighborhood. Ridgeville has a responsibility to the neighbors.
To do what, I guess, is my question. What do you?
I'm saying to start with posting it, like Dr. Effiam said, okay, and also going to the church, and also going to the church.
The police know when it's a police matter. Like, as a park district, I can post about it, and I just want to be clear that that's what we're asking for, is a warning to let people know it's there, that we know it's there, and that the police are involved. Is that it?
And that if you see it, and it, let the police know. I mean, the police, they always react better if more people call them than if one person calls them, right? But a lot of people are seeing this and uncomfortable with it, and they let them know. I feel pretty sure they react differently than if just one person calls.
I think you're totally right. I feel like there's a lot to say about this. The agenda item is about posting on social media. So I just want to make sure that
That's what I'm
clarify what that's going to be and kind of come to an agreement on that. We should probably put this on the agenda for next time we meet to continue conversations about how we can work with the church or work with the community to try to, make people.
I think we start with the social media posting, just like you said. That's on the agenda.
Right.
Let's,
So should we talk about, are we all agreed on that post, on what that is?
We need to take a vote to do it, whether we do it or not. I mean, it seems like a no-brainer to me, but
So I feel strongly that if we as a committee were to communicate directly to the public through social media, that the board should absolutely be able to know about that in advance and maybe even vote on it or at least express agreement before that kind of a move.
Well, if we agree on it here, we take it as a recommendation.
Excuse me, can I please talk? Because as we've already established, the REDI committee is, underneath the board. We are not in the position of taking any action. We are in the position of discussing things and then referring it back to the board, and the board can choose to take action. I'm very uncomfortable with the REDI committee just posting on social media as the Ridgeville Park District, anytime that somebody thinks a message should be made, because
that's not what I'm saying.
That's not really in line with the fact that the board is elected members who make decisions for the park district, and that, Brian as our director probably, like you say, Natalie, you and Brian are the ones who are going to experience the direct repercussions or fallout or whatever it is that would happen as a result of this. And also in terms of like trying to make a difference with what's going on that we have a problem with, if people are not seeing the graffiti take place, I'm not quite clear what our goal is here. If we want the police called whenever graffiti is found on the sidewalk, I don't understand how that leads to less graffiti taking place. If they're not catching the person, I mean, that's kind of the thing with graffiti. If you're able to put it up on a wall and get out of there before you're caught, the damage is done. And unless somebody comes and paints over it, the damage is done. So, I mean, and these are in chalk most of the time. The things that are posted, the city should absolutely be removing those. I mean, I don't even think that's a police issue. I think that's like a streets and sanitation issue that they need to be removing. I mean, Natalie, I don't know if you've looked recently, when you and I were there with Matt and Brian and we saw the things posted to the street lights, is that still there? Because I mean,
I don't know if the street lamp stuff is still there. I know that Ruben will clean the sidewalk anytime he sees it or it's brought to his attention. I think it's also important to note that this was an agenda item at a board meeting. So the board is already involved in this conversation. So I think that you do have a point, Martha, that it might need to be any action. I think there could be a recommendation that like, here's how the REDI committee could work on this. Here's what we could post about it on social media. Here's how we can like help move this forward. But I do think we do need to take something to the board about an idea for action.
I'm getting really confused here. The REDI committee decides on something and gives a recommendation to the board.
But the board has to refer it to the committee first.
All right, well, I'm a board member and I'm bringing it to the committee and it's on the agenda. But the REDI committee doesn't make a decision, Martha, ever. They recommend to the board always. So all that whole conversation.
That's the point. That's the point I'm making, is that like, it sounds like we need to take our recommendation right now to the board.
We have to find out that we agree on a recommendation.
Yes.
And then we take it to the board. We don't make that decision. That was never what I was saying.
Yes.
We don't need all this discussion.
Well, we do because we're talking about making a post right now about it. And it sounds like this conversation needs to be taken to the board.
Well, first we need to decide whether we want to do it. Then we can decide on what it should say. And then we recommend that to the board.
Okay.
And the board makes a decision. Is that right?
Well, here's my question for you all. And I'm stepping aside from the social media because number one, I don't use it and I don't know what all that means. I think going forward to look at issues that come before the committee, the question is, what is it that we would like to accomplish through this. And I very much see, again, while it may not be hurtful to some, maybe a lot of people aren't seeing it. Remember, every time Ruben has to clean it up, he has to read it. Every time Elaine's son walks by it, he has to read it. So there may be only a few people who see it or read it, but remember the emotional damage that can do to people who are already experiencing exclusion. For the church, I can all but guarantee, I know Martha quite well. If they've seen it, it's been a discussion on their table, but it's been a discussion along with all the other hate stuff that's going on around them as well. So in my sense, the bigger is not so much whether the REDI committee makes a public stance and directs people toward the police, but it's more how can we walk with, how can we be partners with people who are seeing this and are being wounded by it. And that's why I said, taking cookies to the church and letting them know that we're present. We have collected this and we are washing these signs down, or just we're here with you. Just white people, right, being present with Black people who are once again experiencing trauma. So it's not so much about what action do we take that's going to make a public stance, but what action do we take that could make people feel included who are already feeling excluded. People who are feeling isolated and are feeling like nobody cares about this stuff, to find out that somebody does care. And we're going to have a Wash Wednesday where we're going to come and wash down the sidewalks and paint, chalk signs of encouragement. It doesn't have to even be that deep, but think about what we're trying to accomplish through our actions.
Thanks, Pat. That made a lot of sense. I think that idea of sharing, we're aware that this is happening. If you need to talk about it, you can reach out to us. If you want to, alert the police about it, they know what's going on. Here's how you can support your community, whatever. I think that to me makes sense for a social media post.
Well, and Natalie, you don't even need anyone's permission to make a post in the first place. Can't you just post that without anyone telling you that you can post that?
I mean, this is a sensitive issue because it's a police matter. The police are involved in this. I don't know what the police are doing about it, but they have been involved and they are aware. So it's the same, there's the park district is nonpartisan. So I can't post things about Black Lives Matter, for example. I can't post things that are politically motivated in any kind of a way. I have to be very
what's the political
about
problem
these
here?
posts. So if it's a police, I don't know where the police are. Maybe the police are dealing with this right now and we just aren't aware of it. I don't know. So it's hard.
What's the political issue here?
It's not a political issue. I'm saying if the police are dealing with this right now and we're just not privy to that information, I feel weird. I don't know. I think what Pat's talking about and making a post about we see you, we're aware of what's going on. If you need to talk about it, reach out. If you want to support your community, here's how to do it. That's all great. And that's 1000% what the REDI committee is about. I would prefer to lean in that direction in terms of our social media presence than sending vigilantes out into the night to find graffiti artists that may or may not have mental illness.
That's a little dramatic, I think.
Maybe, but I don't know. We don't have the
a lot of things, but not a vigilante. I like that.
Yeah. I could go on social media right now and say I'm a Ridgeville board member, and there has been, I haven't seen it, but if I had seen it, I've seen blah, blah, blah around Ridgeville. If you see it, please let the police know.
Yeah.
What is political about that? What is going to cost?
I'm not saying that's political. I'm just talking. JC asked me about social media posting, so I was.
That's what I'm saying. What's the problem with something like that? I don't get it.
I don't know how to better explain.
I've got one more thing that I want to throw out here, and that is that one of the two officers. Well, I guess there were three of them, but one of the two officers that I spoke to, I believe her name was Roden. I took notes, but anyway, she was quite concerned, and she said that she was particularly concerned about the church, and said that if they would request it, that they would send a cruiser to be out there by during services. Now, what do they know at this particular point, except some random person who was, in the middle of the hubbub, over at the Art Institute, was telling them that there was some potential danger that she thought they should be aware of, and that the police would be, the police would be ready to send a cruiser if they were asked. Now, that must have sounded like something coming out of the blue. I felt terrible that it came up that way, but I also was aware that it was Sunday morning, and that there could be danger. So anyway, I would suggest, and Dr. Effiam, you probably have some excellent ideas as to how this could be accomplished. I think that there should be some consciousness raising with Evanston churches, that there is somebody out there that seems to think that God's tired of them.
Yeah.
And says so quite graphically. So
I find it fearful living in this neighborhood. There's all kinds of anti-Semitism going around now, and this seems to be like the tip of.
I think we all agree that it's scary and awful. I think we just need to decide on how we want to support the community as a committee, right?
Right.
I was working at JRC when there were those there was nationwide, there was a lot of threats against synagogues, and we had both at pick up and drop off for school, we had somebody stationed outside of the building, and I have to say it really did feel a lot better knowing that somebody's had their eyes on the building. Yeah. I see Martha's hand up. Shama, I saw your hand up. I realized after you spoke last time, technically you have to hold your comments until like the citizen comment part at the end. I don't know if you want to keep yourself little notes of what you want to say at the end so you don't forget as we go. But I realized I made a little mistake earlier when I called on you. I'm sorry. And then Martha, I'm let you speak in just a minute. I really do think that we need to like close up this conversation and move through the rest of the agenda. So
with nothing decided?
Well, Martha has one more thing that she wants to say, and then I don't know that there's anything for us to vote on, is there?
Well, to take this as a recommendation to put it on social media, I guess not. I don't know.
It seems, I mean, we can take a vote on it certainly, but it seems to me, I know Martha still has something else to say, but it seems to me like everybody is, or the majority is in favor of that, but we can vote on that, right? It's on the agenda, so we can technically vote on it.
Okay. Martha, what would you like to say?
It sounds like, I know, I just happen to know that Shama lives in a neighborhood that is very heavily populated by people who are part of the Reba Place Church and or Fellowship. I'm just curious if anyone has reached out to them to connect about this, find out if they know anything, find out if they're seeing it too. Again, I support the idea of connecting with our community, over any issue that is affecting the entire community or only some people in the community, and, working together for solutions. I think that we've seen way too many times as a park district in just the past couple of years that social media is often, a source of more harm than good. It's also something that is inherently not inclusive because not everyone is on social media, but those of us who are tend to think that everybody sees the things that we post. No, they don't. Not the people who aren't on there. There are better ways to reach out to the actual community and the actual people that, who with an issue like this would be the ones who are actually affected by it. And that, those are the people that we need to connect with. We have no idea if those people are on Facebook or not, if they're not currently following our Ridgeville Park District page, because I don't even think we've hit 1,000 followers on that page. Who's really seeing it? And so, I mean, again, I just see multiple issues with our first step being that we post on social media about it. I disagree. And if we're going to vote on it, I'll make that clear in that form as well. But, if we feel that it's Christians who are being targeted, to me, it makes the most sense that the first step would be to connect with, churches in the area and kind of put our heads together and make sure that we are all on the same page. You know, there could be a collective receptacle of some sort digitally for the photographs of the graffiti so that everybody can be kept on the same page about what kinds of things are being seen. You know, I'm asking again that somebody share with me as many images as we have, because I have only seen what I saw one day with my naked eye. I haven't seen anything else, a digital image or in person. And we can't even sit here and talk about the same thing if we don't have that same thing in front of us. So, you know, I'm glad that we have discussed it and that people are making their feelings known, but it feels like a, you know, an initial discussion to me. It doesn't feel like something where, okay, yep, a social media post is the way to go. And I might be the only one who feels that way, but that's how it's feeling to me. So, I mean, the initial thing I said there was, has anyone connected with the Reba Place Church? So I, you know, if anyone has an answer to that, that was my question.
I don't know about that. I don't know if Brian has spoken with Reba. Just to answer your question. Sorry, Debbie.
I'd like to say that, first of all, it's not just Christians that are being targeted. When you have nooses, and that's not Christians, that's Blacks. And when you've got Ku Klux Klan, that's Blacks and Jews. So it's not just Christians that are being targeted. And what does it hurt? We put all kinds of things on the Ridgeville website. It's not going to hurt anything. It just makes people aware that we're aware. And whoever happens to read it will get that information. And it'll be talked about, word of mouth. I mean, I think we should do all of it. I think we should put it on social media, like Dr. Effiam said, you know, just a short blurb. This is what's out there. We've noticed it. If you notice it, whatever is the thing to do, it seems to me you were told to call the police. So we should put that. You know, it's like all of a sudden social media is not the, you know, it took me years to get here where social media is the big deal. And now it's not. I mean, you know, I don't know why we're tiptoeing around this. We're going to feel awful if something happens and we didn't do anything.
Can I just say something to that really quickly, Debbie? I totally agree with you. I think that I'm coming at it from a different angle, because when we say just kind of generally, let's put it on social media, I am in fact the person that is putting it on social media. So I want to be very intentional about how we say things, what we're saying.
Dr. Effiam said it really well.
No, I know that. And I know that through this discussion, I know now I have a better idea, but I'm letting you know that when I came at this from the beginning, I just want all of us to be aware and on the same page that, like, when we talk about, like, just put it on social media, like, I have to do that. And I just want to be very careful because I've gotten burned in the past on social media. So I want to be very careful about it.
How do you feel about just saying we've noticed?
And I think I know the direction that everybody wants to go in. I don't know at this point, JC, do you feel like we need to take a vote on it, or how do you want to move forward with this?
I don't feel like we need to take a vote personally, because we don't decide what you post.
Well, you do in this case.
We give a recommendation.
This is a REDI committee conversation. And so if you all want me to post something, I feel confident I can email it to you all if you want to see it first. But, like, I just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
I think taking a vote would be best.
I'll make a motion. We make a motion, right? I make a motion that we make a recommendation to the board that we put something on our website, whatever you call it, that something to the effect of, and Natalie, you can write it, you know, it's come to our attention that this negative blah, blah, blah is out there, and we would like anyone who sees it to please call the police. They are aware of it. Done. I don't see what the big, anyway, that's my motion.
Just to clarify your motion, Debbie, you said website, but you mean social media.
I mean, I'm sorry. That's how much I know about social. We need to put it on the computer. That's my motion.
I'll second it.
Okay, so technically we would be in discussion now that we have a motion and a second. I just want to ask Natalie, how many people do we reach when we send out our Ridgeville newsletter emails?
2,000.
2,000. Okay. So it sounds like that would literally be double the amount of people that we could reach
That's not,
as opposed to the people who view our page. Because I think Facebook loosely works that if people aren't following our page, they're not going to see any posts that we make
that's
unless
not,
they work.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, Martha. That's not necessarily true. I get to see our numbers for like reaching, like post reach. The amount of people that follow us are not the same amount of people that we reach. People will share things,
Yeah.
and then people will like them or comment on them, and then we get a whole new audience. So even if only like 800 people follow us, sometimes 3,000 people see our posts.
Okay. And are you talking about posts that you have boosted with advertising dollars, or are you talking about both of them? Okay. And
Yeah,
are you saying you
depends
would have
how
reached
interested people are in what I'm posting. If I feel like I need to reach a wider audience, I usually pay for it. If I feel confident that people are just gonna pass it on themselves, I'll just kind of wait and see how that goes. But it goes both ways.
Okay. And are you saying that you would have seen as much engagement as 3,000 with something that you didn't pay to boost?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, that's good to know for other purposes. Has anyone considered that because this is a police issue and the police are already on it, that we could actually request that the Evanston Police Department make a post about this and perhaps even tag Ridgeville so that, you know, those two different communities are sort of linked up in the sort of targeted audience based on the algorithms. You know, if it's EPD posting and they reference Ridgeville, then a lot more people are going to see it right off the bat. And that message is coming from the police instead of from us. I mean, just to talk back a little bit about what JC has mentioned and Natalie has mentioned, you know, saying something is political is kind of like saying something is an equity issue. Okay, tell us more. Explain why you're making this claim that something is blah, blah, blah. And when people talk about policing being a political issue, it is hard to talk about. But if I were going to take a stab at it, I would say that there are people who believe that, you know, more police is better than less police. Police should be the go-to for any issue that anyone's having in their community, and that the police are fair and deal with everything in a way that is, you know, along the serve and protect lines. We already know that last part is absolutely not correct, and that Black people and people of color, period, are disproportionately affected by actions of the police, even to the extent of losing their lives, and also, you know, everything before that. And it is a huge problem. And anyone, especially if they are white, who encourages the community to call the police, period, end of story, it is a certain thing and it will ignite a certain argument. And that's not necessarily where we want to go, especially as the Racial Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Committee. I mean, that should be obvious. So that's kind of a little bit about that political connection. And we can go more into that later on, and probably should, because engaging with the police and looking at the equity and inclusion and diversity issues when you talk about the police in our community, that would absolutely be something that would make sense for us to talk about, in my opinion. But, you know, I talk a lot. Let me go back to how I started. Maybe the EPD should be contacted and they could make a social media post and tag us. And that way, a lot more people will see it. And it's the police talking about a police issue.
I'd like to call the question. My motion was not about the police doing it. My motion is about Ridgeville doing it. The police will do what they do. I am not afraid to tell people to call the police. Sorry. And I would like to call the question to the motion on the table.
So Shama, just so you know, that means it goes straight to roll call. Oh wait, do we have to have a motion and a second for that too?
Well, you not only need a second, you actually have to roll call the vote of whether we are in fact calling the question.
No,
or
you
not.
don't.
Yes, we did. We just did this at the board meeting for the Ridgeville Park District this month. We just did this. And it was Charlie's advice that we have to roll call the calling of the question. And then if that is approved, then we move to the vote.
All right, I missed that, sorry.
Martha's right. So Debbie's made a motion to call, so she needs a second. And this basically means that we would go, no more discussion, we will go straight to the vote on the issue.
Seconded.
So then Shama, do a roll call for all of us.
I have a question about, okay, so in the notes, in the meeting minutes, what I have so far is that Debbie has motioned to create a social media post regarding the graffiti, and Elaine has already seconded that motion. That happened already.
Yes, and so now we're.
Would that be considered calling to question?
No, so now this is a new motion that's gone up.
Okay.
The motion that Debbie made was to call the question, which essentially ends discussion, right?
Okay.
Elaine has seconded that motion.
Okay.
So now you're going to do a roll call so that we find out if we're going to call the question and quit conversation. Then we'll do a second roll call if we do to answer the original motion that Debbie. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the new motion to call the question, JC Herman,
No.
how do you vote?
I'm sorry,
Yes.
could you not hear me? I said no.
So we are voting on the motion to call the question.
Right.
All right, then JC Herman.
I don't know if you heard JC. She voted no.
Okay. Martha Gaines,
No.
Natalie Silly,
Yes.
Elaine Siegel,
Yes.
and Debbie Braun.
Yes.
Okay. And that would be 3 yeses and 2 nos.
Yes.
So now
the
you-
motion moves forward. And so now we go to a roll call to vote on the initial motion that Debbie had put forward about do we or do we not post to social media regarding the graffiti.
The motion is to send that recommendation to the board.
Oh, that
We
was,
don't make that decision.
oh, I'm
Okay.
sorry. I didn't know that.
Yeah, we don't make any decisions. We make a decision to send it to the board as a recommendation.
Okay.
That's my understanding. And
Thank you for
Well, and
clarifying.
can I clarify too? Because my understanding is that we were specifically talking about the post the way that Debbie worded it, right? We're not just talking about a post in general. We're talking about the post the way that Debbie worded it.
well, with those things included, but Natalie will word it better.
Right, the wordsmithing Natalie would do, but with your points of like, this is happening, we recommend you call the police, like those are 2 big tenements of the post that okay, I just want to make sure I know exactly what it is that
Yeah.
I'm going on.
And not that I'm going to post it, that we're just recommending it to
Recommending it to the board, yes,
Right.
yes, okay.
Okay. So under this new motion, Debbie Braun is motioning to send the recommendation to create the social media post. And she is she's recommending sending it to the board.
correct.
Okay. We would need a second on that,
We
yes?
have that. So Debbie did the motion, Elaine seconded it a long time ago. So now we're just doing the roll call to see if it moves forward.
Okay, thank you. JC Herman,
No,
Martha Gaines,
No.
Natalie Selly,
No.
Elaine Siegel,
Yes.
Debbie Braun.
Yes.
That would be 3 no's and 2 yeses.
So what are we doing? We're just doing nothing with it? I
We're
mean,
gonna
that's
put
the
it on-
alternative,
we're gonna put it on
right?
the agenda. for
Right?
the- I think we're going to put it on the agenda to actually have this conversation again, specifically, not just under the guise of social media posts, but to actually like formulate a plan around it, take all of that to the board. I mean, that's my impression of
When's the next
Right.
board meeting?
June.
second week of
Yeah,
June.
it's a month away. We're waiting for something to happen.
Well, we
Do
meet
do
our
you
meeting before that next board meeting. The REDI committee is meeting before the board meeting. So we could still have all of this done before the next board meeting.
We
Natalie,
are
I
meeting-
have a question. if we as a committee want to communicate with the board, obviously, constrained by the Open Meetings Act, is there any mechanism for us as a committee, obviously via Shama maybe, or via JC, is there a way for us to communicate to the board? Obviously that communication would go to you, Natalie, I guess, and then you would share it with the board. So I'm just kind of wondering, do we really have to consider that anytime we as a committee want to make communications with the board, that we would have to wait until the next monthly meeting? Or is there a way to communicate outside of that?
But if you make something to the board, Martha, and it's outside of the monthly meeting, it's still something the board has to vote on. So what's the point?
I'm not talking about issues that would require a vote. I'm talking about sort of the idea of literally just updating. So if we are feeling like there is an imminent danger here to people in our community, then that is the kind of thing that we would want to deliver quickly, not wait until the next board meeting. But if we collectively feel that a social media post is not the right way to do it, which we just voted on, it doesn't mean we do nothing. That's kind of what I'm trying to get at. I suggested a number of ways we could start working on this with the community that are not a social media post, like connecting with more of the churches, finding out what they know, finding out if their communities view it to be an issue, etc. Connecting also with the EPD directly. And it sounds like Elaine has already had numerous communications with EPD, but we have not had communications with EPD as a park district about this, or as a committee of the park district about this. So those are other options that we can choose to move on. So I'm just, again, in the event that something is an emergency, I wonder if, and I'm not saying this is, I'm wondering if there is an allowable way, and maybe this is a question for Charlie, Natalie, but because if information needs to be conveyed for somebody's safety, I have to imagine there's a way for us to do that instead of waiting until.
Yeah.
I have a question though. If you're communicating something to the board and not at a board meeting, the whole board still has to get together and discuss it or vote on it.
Right.
So what's the point?
Well, I'm not talking about sending something to the board that they then have to take action on. I'm talking about sharing information with the board.
Yes, we can do that, Martha. I can do that.
And also with Brian, because if Brian is the person at Ridgeville, and he very well might be, who would make the most sense to be connecting directly with EPD, connecting directly with the churches, then that, Brian's not privy to these meetings. I don't know if he's making a habit of watching these after the fact or whatever, but there needs to be an official mechanism for making sure that communication goes to the district, and that any steps of communication, because I wouldn't think engaging with churches and the police is anything the board needs to vote on.
I think it absolutely is.
Yeah, I disagree. If Brian is seeing something dangerous in the neighborhood, he can call the police. He doesn't need to get a vote.
He can, but we can't.
Right, but that's what I was just saying, is that if we were to communicate officially to the park district that we feel that this is a safety issue, then Brian can take action by connecting with the police and by connecting with churches if he agrees that that's a next step that could be taken.
Might I make a suggestion?
Please.
Well, one of the suggestions, I think you should have this conversation with the board following our next meeting. And essentially to draft guidelines of when REDI needs to communicate first with the board. For example, I still think when we're looking at this, the issue that we were talking about earlier, our goal as a REDI committee is to make sure that we are including the people who are most impacted by this issue. Well, the people who are most impacted by this issue at this point that we can pinpoint, right, are Christians, including Black specifically, potentially Boy Scouts. And it feels to me, and EPD, it feels to me this is a great opportunity to have a Zoom conversation around this with the community about what's happening in the community. So in that sense, it seems to me that would not be an issue that needed to be communicated for permission from the board, but rather communicated so hopefully someone could attend or at least be aware of it. And so it seems like you just need to draft some guidelines of when the board must be first consulted and when the board must simply be notified.
So that should go on our agenda
Yes,
for next meeting.
agreed.
Along with this topic, Shama, just notes for you to put on the agenda for next meeting. The point that Pat just made about when the board should be notified and when they should be asked for voting, right?
Right.
And then also agenda item to further discuss action that the REDI committee would like to take in regards to the graffiti.
And I'd like to just make a comment. It's just a comment. And my comment is that, Elaine, I feel really badly. I feel like you haven't been listened to. And I feel really fearful, and I feel like I haven't been listened to. And I just want that to be in the minutes. You know, the minute you said Ku Klux Klan, I got really scared. And it's in my neighborhood too. And I just want that said, that I think we're just, this business about, well, we don't want to get the police involved. What about the police? As far as life goes right now, the police are the people that you call when there's a problem and you're worried. You want to change the police and all that? That's not what's happening here. And I just want that said, that I'm very, very fearful.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you.
Casey?
I just want to respond to that. I'm really sorry that you feel like you haven't been heard. I feel like I've done a lot of listening. I don't necessarily agree with your approach. And part of that is because I come from a culture that does not trust police because they were not there to protect my parents or their families. So I find a lot of solidarity with this idea of, I don't feel like it's the Park District's job to tell people to call the police. Do I feel like people need to be aware of this? Absolutely. But I think people need to make their own decision about how to manage this. And I think at this point, I think that we just need to put this on the agenda for next week.
But you live in this culture now, honey, and the police.
I do, and I don't necessarily call the police when I see something happening. I weigh the circumstances first, and I don't necessarily call the police first.
Well, if I'm being strangled, please call the police. Don't weigh the circumstances.
Well, again, let me take us back to, because this is, I can understand both standpoints, and particularly as a Black woman. This is why it becomes critical for us to hear from the people who are most impacted. And it's not the one person who's most impacted. It is by the people who are most impacted by this. It could very much be that we could reach out to the Jews and to the Christians, and they say, leave it alone, we've got this.
And what about Dr. Effiam? What about Elaine, who's been impacted by it?
That's why I said the people that are most impacted, and that's why that becomes important. I listened to Elaine when she talked about her son. Yes, her husband was there as well, but her son, how did that impact him? So it's hard for us, and even me as a Black woman who has had a chance to look at several of these pieces and sit with one in front of me right now. It is very hurtful. It's very painful. It brings back many memories. I am one of the most impacted right now. Collectively, how would that group have us go back to our equity process, lens process? How would they want us to respond? And that's what becomes important. And so you're, Debbie, saying you feel
as a Jew who feels impacted by this,
right? That
the police would be called.
Well, and you feel like you haven't been listened to. It's important to hear that, not just from Debbie's perspective or Pat's perspective or Elaine's perspective, or the church. It's important to get everybody together and hear how should we as a community respond to this. And we would have it would be less of a debate for us if we were hearing more voices of more people who were impacted. Which is why I suggest a forum with the police and with the Black church and with the synagogue, and let's hear and let's see how people are feeling, and then we could make a more educated decision. But it's hard to do that when when we don't
Is
have
that the
these people
job
to
of
take.
Ridgeville to set that up?
I think that is absolutely why REDI Committee was established, is to convene these forums and to hear from people, or how they don't even have to be forums. We know that, but to hear from the various people who are impacted and hear what their desire is. They, like I said, simply may want a police presence on Sunday, and that's what we give them, and it's done.
So who pulls this together?
We don't, how do we give them that?
We call the police or tell them to call the police. But how do we pull this together, this forum? I mean, tell them they can call the police and ask for an escort, but how do we pull together this forum? It's great to say we should have this, but who's going to do this? I'm happy to call Tasha and see if she'll be involved in one.
Well, we call the police department. We start with Martha, because her church is the one most impacted right now, but also reach out to the other Black churches. What are the synagogues in the area?
JRC, Beth Emmett.
So we reach out to them and say, we'd like to have a forum and a discussion on hate speech and how it affects the neighborhood. Here's the Zoom number. Will you join us?
What?
Here's the Zoom number, and please join us.
So do we write a letter, or does this have to go to the board to be okayed, or are we authorizing Shama or somebody to write this letter to the synagogues and the churches? And I mean,
Can I just, we have other things. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, and this is an important conversation,
No.
but it's not on the agenda today. And we do have a couple other things, and I know a couple people have to go. So is it okay to move this forward to our next meeting?
Absolutely.
we already have, I think.
Thank you, Natalie. I agree. I'm sorry. I'm trying to get my kids in bed with the lights out.
The next agenda item, JC, just so you know, is the list of organizations. I'm going to table that till the next meeting.
Okay. Awesome. And then Debbie, you have new business to talk about us meeting once a month.
My understanding of the REDI Committee, after talking to Dr. Effiam and Pat, please correct me, is that we had the meetings twice a month or every other week or every week, or except the board meeting week or whatever it was, until we got things done, you know, that like the equity lens and this and that and the other. It's my understanding that we don't meet that often regularly, that it's when we meet once a month, and if something else comes up, then we may need to call a meeting. Dr. Effiam, what was the deal?
So initially why I set it up during the training time was to make sure that we could get all of our documents in order up through the equity lens and whatever other foundational documents we needed. That was the purpose of me setting them for 2 weeks. Looking at your agenda, now you can decide, do you have enough business, regular business, to meet every 2 weeks, or should you, based on the agenda, meet once monthly?
And I'm saying, based on the agenda, I'd like to meet once a month.
What?
Yeah.
Pat, remind me, are we the ones that are physically going to be going through all of the like the bylaws and stuff for the Park District, or is that like who's physically going through all that stuff with the lens? I don't see how we can possibly get through all of that stuff meeting only once a month. I don't know how quickly we're going to be moving into that. I mean, the board, I don't know if you all know, but the board did approve the charter at the last meeting. So that seems like a lot of work for us to do once a month, to go through all of that stuff and use the equity lens.
And a big part of that.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Good question, JC. A big part of it is now what you all need to go through more than anything is the training. Because once you go through the training, how this would work, whether you were a newly formed group or an old group, is that you would then section off parts of the code, and either in groups of one or in small groups, you could apply that equity lens process. And then when you come back to your meeting, you report out what you found in particular parts of the code.
Okay, I have a question. This is Martha. Sorry, I called in because I had to leave the house. I remember that when we were discussing the equity charter, equity lens, everything that was entailed in the documents that Dr. Effiam put together for us that we ultimately, modified, approved, sent to the board, blah, blah, blah. It came up at least twice from Dr. Effiam that questions we were asking during that process would be answered in the subsequent training. Once we have our charter, once we have our equity lens, there would be a training, as Dr. Effiam just said, that would teach us how to use it, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, even if what Debbie is saying is correct, which is that the only reason we decided to meet twice a month is that we were doing all of this initial work to set up the committee, which, by the way, I don't remember, but maybe that was the goal. I just remember that we decided we were meeting twice a month. But even if that part is true, we're not there yet. I mean, there's at least one training already on the horizon that has been alluded to numerous times. So I just agree with what JC said, which is that, I don't see us getting that work done in one meeting or if we are only meeting once, we'll get the work done, but it's going to be at a much slower pace. I think we could certainly have shorter meetings and still meet twice a month. I mean, if we can curtail discussion on individual agenda items significantly, we could be meeting for an hour twice instead of closer to 2 hours once, and then we're talking about the same amount of time.
You can always call special meetings.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't take much.
And that's what I thought it was about. And Dr. Effiam, when I talked to you about this last week, I thought that's what we said, was that we didn't need to meet this much unless there were things that we were needed
well,
to deal
again,
with.
it depends on your agenda. What I don't want, and Martha just brought this up again, what I don't want us to forget is now that we have the charter in place and the equity lens process is for us to think we're done. That equity lens process takes time to really walk through and train through. And certainly the code is one place that we can begin that. I don't know if you remember when we did our initial report, I had my staff go over the code page by page with an equity lens, and we recommended particular parts of the code that you take a look at with the equity lens. And so that's the work I think that we can begin. I think the other thing that would be helpful for you all is to put time limits on each of the agenda items. Because as you know, the items that we're talking about, we could talk about indefinitely. But to say, here's what we're trying to accomplish, and we're going to give this a 7-minute time limit would be helpful as well.
I guess I see the training as different from just twice a month meetings. That's where, obviously we need the training whenever, but I was talking about these kinds of meetings 3 weeks out of the month or whatever it is. The training is to me, a whole different thing.
Yeah, and I would definitely agree with that. I agree that with the training, you need to set out and you need to keep it consistent and you need to do bi-monthly. Once you get through that, as I said, there's a lot of work to be done with that. Once you get through that, then you'll begin to see how much is there on our agenda on a monthly basis to actually deal with.
So then do we maybe, Debbie, do you want to table this and we revisit this after we go through the training?
We don't have to revisit it. It was just a thought, I'm not asking for any kind of action on it. I just find it really difficult to sit at these meetings where there's a lot of verbal vomit that doesn't really, come to anything. I feel like sometimes when we finish these meetings, we had good discussions, but I'd rather get more into the training.
I echo you on that. I'm really looking forward to getting into that training. So I would love for that to start as soon as possible. And I do think, and I know a lot of this falls on me, I do think that we need to do a better job of using our time more wisely. I was a little extra distracted. I'm manning everything on my own in the house today. So I apologize, a little extra distracted toward the end today. But I think that I think we need to be more concise. I think we need to be more mindful of everybody's time. And I would like to start that training. And I'm guilty of this myself, but making sure that we're staying on topic, and I will do a better job reining us in. That's everything on the agenda. I know this was a very heartfelt meeting. So I do, Pat, I see your hand up. Please go ahead.
No, my hand has been up. I keep forgetting to put it down.
Okay.
You can put up a hand. I don't even know how to do that.
All you need to do is spend time with a 7-year-old in District 65. You'll be
Thank you.
3 minutes.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Did we land on any particulars with regard to that training? I know we just kind of referenced it a number of times, but what's the plan? When is that taking place?
Whenever JC puts it on the agenda.
Okay, and Pat, did we want to do that in the context, I hope you can hear me through my mask, I was picking up dinner. Did we want to do these trainings in the context of a regular meeting, or are we, because now we're Open Meetings Act, these are open to the public, I mean, are we doing the training like we did the other trainings where it's not a meeting, it's just a training for the particular group, or are we integrating the training into our otherwise meeting?
Do we need to ask Charlie?
The first meeting of the month and meeting the second meeting of the month. Is that what you're kind of talking about, Dr. Effian?
What did you say? I'm sorry, I did miss that one.
Are you talking about if we're meeting bi-monthly, are you talking about like doing training at the first meeting of the month and doing a normal REDI meeting the second meeting of the month? Is that what you were talking about?
It can work that way, or it can be folded into a regular meeting. And a portion of the meeting committed to the training piece. That really, again, depends on how you all want to operate. The good thing about if you hold it during a regular meeting, not that we get any public participation, but if you do, it's a great educational opportunity for people.
Well, I think they'll have to be public anyway because of OMA.
That's what don't they have to be public because we're all together?
Yeah, so I kind of feel like it makes sense to just designate the first Thursday of the month to, the first Thursday of the month to our normal meeting, and then the third Thursday of the month to training, so that if there's anything we need to take to the board, we can do it right before the board meeting the following week.
Good idea.
Yeah, I agree with that schedule, but I just want to say I'm pretty sure that there are exceptions to the OMA, and training is one of them. I can't remember if it was Dr. Effian or Alderman Rainey, but former Alderman Rainey, but somebody told me when we were kind of on this topic last time around, whether we were subject to OMA or not, and how training fit into that and all of that. Obviously, everyone remembers that we just went ahead with our training in closed meetings. We set a date when meetings would be open, and now they're open. But if for any reason we feel there's a good argument for having trainings in closed sessions, I think we are allowed to do that. We would have to get, a legal answer on that. But if anybody, if nobody feels that there's a need to do that, we don't even have to ask the question. We could just plan for it to be open.
I like the idea of being open.
I like to keep it open too. And if people happen to show up, which they haven't, then they can get something out of the training.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about transparency in the past and how important that is with this committee. So I feel like open is the best way to go.
Well, Natalie, have you ever looked? I've never gone back on the YouTube channel. Has anyone watched them? Do you check ever?
Yeah. I haven't checked recently, but when I update or when I post this meeting tomorrow, I'll look.
The other one.
But people do view all the meetings, just, some more than others.
Haven't we gone through
and that's actually, sorry,
Yes.
Go ahead.
We've gone through the agenda, Elaine pointed out.
Wait, Elaine was trying to say something.
That's what I was just saying. I think we've gone through the agenda.
We have.
So make a motion to
agenda.
make a motion to that word. the meeting.
Adjourn.
Yeah, the
I
meeting.
second her motion.
You can roll call us out.
Welcome.
Oh, right.
All right. JC Herman,
Yes.
Martha Gaines.
Yes.
Natalie Sully,
Yes.
Debbie Braun,
Yes.
Elaine Siegel.
Yes.
All right. All motioned. Meeting
I'm
adjourned.
locking my doors tonight.
Yeah, really.
Really, I'm scared. I really
It's
am.
frightening.
It's a terrible way to leave a meeting for me. Not
It
for
is.
you.
I'm
Feel
sorry.
awful.
Debbie,
I'm
I'm
gonna
sorry.
send you all the ghost stories, Debbie.
I have to take my doggy
Good
out.
night.
Night.
Thank you all so much.
Thanks.
Thank you, JC.
Appreciate it.